Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Road to the World Champs here at PMTT. This one is going to be a big one because I have literally just gotten back from Goldcon, one of the two-day events that was put on in here in southeast Queensland. So I had an awesome time. It was a great event, but that was a lot of games. So I am very much running on empty at the moment. My throat is very sore from basically shouting for the last 2 days straight. So, but I wanted to give you guys all a quick kind of crash course through what happened there, um, and to kind of see how I've been developing with the list and what I've been thinking about it and how that is going to change how I'm going to play at the World Champs in Atlanta in November. So, first up, I went 3-2 overall, which was a little bit disappointing because I was kind of gunning for at least a 4-1, was what I was hoping for. So yeah, that put a bit of a dampener on the weekend. I did have a lot of pressure on myself to do well, and I think I probably put too much pressure on myself. I was like trying to get a really good result, but you do get bad matchups. Sometimes the dice just doesn't go your way, and you can't achieve what you set out to be. So that's one kind of learning experience that I'm taking away from this. Is that to just make sure that I'm not putting too much pressure on myself to perform, and I'm just playing to the best of my ability is the first. It is the first most important thing. So getting onto the games. Actually, before I get onto the games, the list that I took, it's been the same one that I've been playing recently, that I've been having a lot of success with. So it's a Sylvaneth list, and the primary kind of thing about the list is it's got a big unit of 9 Kurnoth Hunters with sides, and they're in there as kind of a combination hammer and anvil. Supporting them, I've got an Arch Revenant to give them bonuses to move and to wound. I've got a Branch Witch in there for a little bit of recursion and some magical support. And I've got, then rounding out the characters, I've got Drycha as kind of a good strike and fade piece, mobile little kind of shooting and fighting unit. And then I've got 2 units of Kurnoth Hunters with swords, both 3-mans, and 2 units of Tree Revs. So that kind of rounds out the list. Oh, and the Spite Swarm Hive as well. So that kind of rounds out the list. It's 2,000 points on the nose. And I've been having a lot of success with it. I really like how it plays. It's not a very typical Sylvaneth build, but it's been working really well. So, and it played quite well on the weekend, despite a slightly disappointing result. So, getting on to the games, my first matchup was against a Stormcast player. He was fairly new to the game, but his list had this kind of big list. Part of his list was Karazai, who had 6 Praetors on him, and a big unit of long strike crossbows. So they were fairly scary. So he ended up being fairly cagey with where Karazai went. He was very afraid of those sides, which is fair. Like they can put out a lot of damage. So the first couple of turns we kind of just danced around each other for a bit. Before I kind of moved up, took control of the center, and kind of forced him to come and engage. So Karazai ended up coming into some swords, did a bit of damage to them, and then my counter punch. The biggest issue with it was he still had a couple of Praetors left alive. So if I got the sides into Karazai, but because he still had some Praetors alive, it meant that there was a decent chance that a lot of my damage was going to get negated and not go through fully onto him. So I actually had sent in Drycha in the same turn to deal with the Praetors. Unfortunately, that meant Karazai got to hit first, and he did take 6 of the 9 sides off, so it's with some very spiky dice, which I was not prepared for. I figured he'd kill maybe 2 or 3. I didn't expect him to take 6. But I ended up doing a little bit of damage to him in that turn. But then I won priority and kind of went into my turn and then wiped him out. Now that he didn't have his bodyguards, now I could strike first, and I could just put the damage on him to kill him properly. And then after that, with everything else that was kind of going on in other areas of the board, I was using the Kurnoth Hunters with swords to take out his screens and his other scoring units. He didn't really have too much left after that, and we kind of called it there. So it was a pretty decent win, 31-10. But it was a really good game. Um, the turn that I killed Karazai, he did have some horrible dice with rolling saves and trying to put some damage through. So the dice definitely played a pretty big factor in that. But yeah, the Sylvaneths, the biggest power of them in that game was definitely the mobility and being able to kind of project the threats with where I needed to go. So that was really good. It was a good learning experience for me how to deal with those big, really resilient pieces and using the tools that I have available to remove the different parts of that list that then add to it. So my second game was against an Ogre Moor Tribes list. It had Kragnos and a couple of Stonehorns. And it was a really weird game. So I kind of bunked it up in my Wildwood, in my area. He bunked it up on his area. I outdropped him, so I gave him first turn. And he proceeded just to sit there and just score an easy battle tactic and not really do much at all. So I really didn't want to move up into the center of the field and take all the Stonehorns and Kragnos' charges. So I kind of sent out the tree revs, got an easy battle tactic, and then that was my turn. Passed the turn. I won priority, passed the turn back to him, and then he did the same thing. So we actually got to turn 4 before either of us really did any charges properly. And I kind of sent some Kurnoth Hunters with swords around the back. I killed some of his screens. I killed his Slaughter Priest, Slaughter Master, sorry. Been playing against too much Khorne recently. Killed his Slaughter Master and then kind of just started kind of forcing him out of his little castle. And in the end, he kind of pulled the trigger on turn 5 to go in. And we kind of just got to the end of the game very quickly. We both denied each other's grand strategies as well. And it was a very passive game for how I've played against ogres recently. But really interesting to kind of play that very more passive, that just scoring. You don't have to commit heavily. You can just get your points. Don't worry about it. If there's not the safe option to engage on your terms, you don't have to. So I ended up getting the win there, 18-15. So only a small win, but still a win, and that game very easily could have been a loss for me. I very much only needed to make a mistake, and then it would have all come crumbling down. So game 3 on day 1 was against a Lumineth player. So he was running Techless, a big unit of Stone Guard with a Stone Mage supporting them, and then some Wardens and some Dawn Riders and a Cow as well. So I didn't really like the look of the Stone Guard. I was very worried with kind of just how resilient they were going to be. So what I ended up doing was I outdropped him, and I didn't outdrop him. We both had 1-drops. He outdropped me and forced me to go first. So what I ended up doing was kind of throwing Drycha forward, giving her all the buffs, and actually charging her into the Stone Guard and charging around behind them to get to the Stone Mage. And I managed to kill him, which was really good because it meant that a lot of the buffs that he could give out on the Stone Guard were now gone. And it really kind of started limiting what he could do, especially because I had Drycha in his backline from kind of turn 1. So it very much just threw a wrench in his plans. So he was kind of caught off guard by that. He didn't really expect it. And kind of from there, just never really got the tempo back under his control. He had to kind of retreat his Stone Guard out because he didn't want Drycha doing damage there. Move Techless and the Cow over to shoot at her to try and deal with her. Had to then pressure up on objectives with other models that he couldn't then use to put elsewhere. So then over the course of the game, I was able to just remove some of his Wardens, remove his Dawn Riders, remove the Cow, and kind of just keep pressuring him to constantly have to try to match me on the points. And so once I started to get a little bit ahead, he very much had to go for more risky plays to kind of stay in the game because he was falling behind in both points and attrition. And it ended up being a decent win to me. He just kind of never could get control of that tempo again. So I took that one out 26-17. Very much another game that could have gone very differently. He only probably needed one or two things to really go his way, and then I would be very much on the back foot. He didn't really have an answer for the sides, except for the Stone Guard, but once I dealt with that Stone Mage, he lost a lot of the toolbox of that unit, so he was very afraid to get them engaged. So that was day 1. So I was very happy with how I played in day one. Getting 3 wins is not something to be unhappy about. And two of the people I'd never played before, which was great, and one of the other people I'd only played once. So it was really, really good to meet new people, to play new lists, to try out the list against other opponents. So I was very happy about that and very excited about day two. So there were 8 undefeated people in going into day two, so I kind of had to read through their lists overnight, and there was kind of 2 or 3 lists that I really didn't want to see, just because they were either being piloted by a very skilled player that I knew that I couldn't afford to make any mistakes against, and he had a very strong list as well. And the other 2 lists that I really didn't want to see were the 2 KO lists, just because they had a lot of toolbox. Sylvaneth stereotypically has a very rough matchup into KO in my experience, and it was just not going to be a great time. One of the KO players I actually played the week before at a smaller one-day tournament, and he just absolutely took me apart. So was very much hoping I wasn't going to play him. Firstly, because it was going to be a very rough game, but secondly, because out of the 64 or 62 people that were there, he was the only one that I had played fairly recently. Everyone else was brand new or someone I hadn't played for a while, so I was looking forward to that. Unfortunately, worse stuff happened. So my first game on day two was against the other KO player, which I wasn't too unhappy about, because he had the softer kind of compared to my list, KO list. It's still a very powerful KO list. It had 2 frigates, 2 big units of Enden Riggers, a full smattering of heroes, and then 3 units of Arcanauts. Um, and he is an excellent player as well. So um, I was looking forward to testing my list, because it definitely would be a test, but I wasn't looking forward to how much it would test me. And so playing through that game, it was an exceptionally tight game. Both of us kind of for the entire game felt like we were on the back foot, um, and talking through it, we both were very much thinking it was always going to be a tough game. He went really aggressive down one flank at the start with his 2 frigates and his Enden Riggers. I countered by teleporting the big unit of sides over there. Unfortunately, I didn't make the 9-inch charge to get in on the top of one, but then I got the double and then got them in on the next turn. Killed one of his frigates outright. He lost a couple of Enden Riggers in the explosion with coming out, and then kind of retreated from that area of the board and started putting pressure on the other side. So by the time I'd managed to get the big unit of sides and Drycha and the Archrev that had moved over there, he had then taken out the other unit of swords, the Branch Witch, and was kind of controlling that area of the board. So it was a very tight game, very much as we were talking about it at the end. Um, there were multiple times where if small things went differently for either of us, we very much could have just taken it and run away. If he didn't, if he got priority into turn two, that would have been a completely different game. If I'd made the charge turn one, completely different game. So for both of us to keep it to such a tight game with how it worked out was really good. But I did end up taking the loss on that one. It was a 27-24 loss. But he was an excellent player. So I'm as unhappy I was at the loss. I'm very okay with losing by that small of a margin to him. So and he actually ended up going on to win the entire event. So once again, very skilled player. If I'm going to take the loss, it's to such a skilled player. I'm not that unhappy about it. So then my last game for the weekend was unfortunately against the other KO player that I had played the week before with the exact same lists. We kind of got to the table and just went, damn, I was really hoping to avoid you, not because we very much know how this game is going to go, but just because we had played each other so recently. So, um, but we set up, we deployed. I went for a different strategy this time. This list is 15 Thunderers in an Ironclad with a small full smattering of heroes, and then 2 gun haulers and some Enden Riggers as well. And it's very much, he's an alpha gun line. He teleports up and shoots you off the table. So I tried to deploy kind of to keep my sights safe from that, because previous game he just wiped out the sides. But in this game I did manage to keep the sides safe, but then he killed off a unit of Tree Ravs, a unit of Swords and Drycha. And then my counter punch just didn't work. Once again I had to teleport. I had to make the 9-inch charge, which I failed. Um, and then I got the double, got the charge in this turn, and then my attacks just didn't really go through, and he spiked his save rolls. So I ended up putting only a few points of damage on his Ironclad instead of killing it, and he would have been able to fully heal it next turn. So we kind of rolled out some important rolls about what would have happened, but he very resoundingly took that win. So it was a bit disappointing to get matched up against him, only because we played each other so recently. We kind of knew how the game went. Talking about it, because we talked about it extensively last week as well, the only real option I have into that list is to go for the long bomb 9-inch charge, and on the top of one, take the first turn, go for the big charge, and then see how that happens. And I basically live or die on that 9-inch charge, which is really unfortunate that the list suffers from that. But if that's, I can't really come up with a better way to deal with that list. So I'm still going to be keeping spitballing ideas and still talking with that guy about possible other ways to get around it, but I probably not going to come up to it. So hopefully I just dodge that at any other future events. So, but yeah, so overall I went 3-2, which was a little bit disappointing. I was chasing that 4-1. So I ended up getting 18th overall. But my only two losses were to the guy that won it and the other guy came 5th. So in terms of competing with the other top players, I definitely kind of, those are the guys that I'm losing to. I'm not like throwing away games that I should be winning. I'm not making too many big mistakes, which is good. And I did manage to walk away with a third place trophy for the coolest dummy. So that was the player votes for painting. So that was really cool to see as well. So overall, I'm chalking this tournament up as a success. Didn't get the result I was really hoping for, but I still had an awesome time. Met some awesome new people, played some really fun games, and learnt a lot. So yeah, next week I'll be running another Gauntlet event, and I'll be kind of talking to people about what lists they bring to that and their experiences at Goldcon, and seeing if I can get a kind of a better understanding of what the meta in the area is doing, and then I'll kind of go from there. I don't think the list is going to change at this stage, but you never know. I still haven't got a players pack or anything from Games Workshop about what the event will be. I don't know what the scoring matrix is. I had a couple of people at the event ask me, it's like, oh, do you know what missions there are? I'm like, I haven't got anything yet, so I don't even know what other what army I'm going to be taking, if it definitely skews one way or the other. And we're still waiting on another Battle Scroll update, which should be out before then. So a lot of things can change. So I'm just going to keep playing, keep practicing, try and get to the best I can possibly get. But yeah, I'll talk to everyone next week. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments down below. If you're enjoying these videos, please like and subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on Facebook or in person at the next event I see you there. Bye.